Harness offers a variety of different out-of-the-box deployment types depending on the type of service you are deploying and where you're deploying to. Today, we'll be reviewing Windows-based deployments and specifically how to deploy to IIS web servers via WinRM. Let's review a completed pipeline to understand what needs to be configured and how it's all brought together in an IIS deployment. This sample pipeline consists of a single deployment stage, and like all harness deployment stages, we want to provide it with a name and a deployment type. For harness Windows-based deployments and IIS, we recommend using WinRM as the deployment type. However, in some cases, SSH may be a suitable option. When using this deployment type, Harness connects to your target Windows instances using the WinRM protocol and executes PowerShell commands to deploy your artifacts. Like all Harness deployments, there are three main components to the pipeline definition: service, environment, and execution. Service is the what is getting deployed, environment is the where it's getting deployed to, and execution is the how to actually do that deployment. Each is defined separately as its own entity, which can help promote reusability of your pipeline definitions. Let's start by reviewing our service definition. We can click on the little pencil icon to pull up the service definition. IIS deployments are often zip files which are exploded onto the new server. Here you can see that as a part of the service definition, we've defined an artifact source which points to a zip file from a defined Artifactory repo. In this service definition, we're using a runtime input as the artifact path, which will prompt the user to select a version of the artifact that should be deployed at runtime. However, we could also make this a fixed value of the service definition by clicking on the little Sigma icon and selecting the pin icon instead. That will reveal a dropdown of the available artifacts that can be deployed. Additionally, as a part of the service definition, we can also define any configuration files or service level variables that should be copied over or included in the deployment. Harness also supports multi-service deployments by toggling the box in the top right corner. Next, let's move over to the Environments tab. Here, we're going to define where the artifacts are getting deployed to. Environments are harness entities, which are logical groupings that represent your different deployment targets, such as dev, QA, production, etc. Alongside your environment definition, you will have to specify an infrastructure definition as well. In Windows deployments, infrastructure definitions will define the actual hosts that you're deploying a service to. In our definition, we're defining a set of hosts in an on-premise data center using comma-separated values. We are also defining the credentials on how we will authenticate into those hosts during deployment. In this case, we're using NTLM authentication. This is the typical pattern for deploying to an on-premise data center. However, for cloud-based Windows VM deployments in Azure and AWS, the configuration will look slightly different as we allow you to take advantage of our out-of-the-box connector capabilities. Now that we've defined the what and the where of our pipeline, we need to define the how. How is the execution actually going to be completed? So we'll pull up the execution tab, which is going to bring up our Pipeline Studio. When you first create your deployment pipeline, you'll be able to choose one of our out-of-the-box deployment strategies, including basic, rolling, or canary deployment types. Our other training videos and documentation cover these strategies in a bit more depth. We'll also allow you to use templates for IIS websites and applications. These templates can serve as the base for your deployment scripts, and the templates will automatically be populated into your pipeline if you select a deployment strategy from our previous screen. Let's take a look at a fully configured pipeline. Well, there are a number of ways to customize the pipeline with our out-of-the-box steps. We'll focus just on the steps for the actual deployment in this video. The command step contains all of our scripts and steps required to complete the deployment to IIS, from copying the artifact to the server, to expanding the artifact, to copying any configuration files from our service definition. You can add your own additional scripts where necessary for doing things like stopping and starting the IIS server or creating virtual directories. Additional configurations optional configurations also allow us to define things like input variables, which may include harness variable expressions if we have defined any in our pipeline, service, or environment definitions. We can also define output variables that we can use in subsequent steps. Once we've completed our definition, we can go ahead and run our pipeline. Through the power of time travel, we can review completed execution of this pipeline. Here you can see the logs for each of our individual steps. You'll also notice that you can view the logs from each of the two different hosts that we're deploying to. In this case, we're using a looping strategy to iterate over each of the hosts, but we could also run these tasks in parallel. If you want more screen real estate for our logs, we can click on the console view. Here we can see all of the input variables that are used in the execution or output variables that we have defined in each individual step. Full details on other configuration options are available on our developer hub at developer.harness.io. You can also check out our other videos on related topics like templating and advanced deployment strategies.